Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the August webinar series for the New Growth Women's Business Center. This month, I think we are excited to introduce Mr. Alan Waldo. He was here last month as well, and you learned a little bit about women's contracting. Well, today we are going to learn about socioeconomic certifications, if I can talk today. Alan is from formerly Missouri PTAC. They've changed the name to Missouri Apex, and he specializes in government contracting and certifications. A little bit about the New Growth Women's Business Center is we serve 13 counties in the state of Missouri and 2 in Kansas. We specialize in business counseling, access to capital. We do have a microloan fund that we can get you connected to. We can do business training, and a lot of that is one-to-one appointments. So get a hold of us to make those. We are a not-for-profit resource backed by the SBA, and we are available online on newgrowthwbc.org as well as Facebook. We would love for you to look us up there. During this webinar, questions are encouraged, and you can utilize the chat or the question and answer. And this webinar series is recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel as well as our website and Facebook. And without further ado, I am going to turn it over to Alan.
Well, dang, that was a heck of an introduction. Thank you.
And I'm going to stop sharing my screen. There we go.
I'm going to start sharing my screen just because you're going to be nice enough to let me do that. So it doesn't look like we had a whole lot of folks here. In fact, when I was kind of looking, it's just I got one person looks like in the meeting. So, if you got a question or something, I mean, feel free to stop me. I've got quite a few slides to go through today, but I will try to cover them in the allotted time period. Like I said, with a little bit smaller group, probably if you got a quick question, feel free to interrupt. What the heck happened? There we go. Perfect. So as Lincoln was saying, I'm with the Missouri Apex Accelerator, formerly Missouri PTAC. I will probably refer to us as PTAC during this conversation because I am still not quite used to the brand new name yet. And we are talking generally today about federal and state socioeconomic certifications, a little bit about the requirements of them. And keep in mind, this is a 10,000-foot course because, I mean, we could have an entire conversation like we did last month, and we just still kind of graze the surface of becoming a woman-owned small business. So we are covering, off the top of my head, probably 8 or 9 different certifications in about an hour time period. So we're going to fly through this fairly quickly. A little bit more about who we are. So we're the formerly Procurement Technical Assistance Centers. We are funded by the Department of Defense through a cooperative grant. And then the grant funds are actually held by the University of Missouri. So Mizzou, so go Tigers, even though my heart's also Missouri State University Bear. We are part of the University of Missouri Extension's Business Development Program. So some of our partner organizations include the Small Business Development Centers and the TAC Trade Assistant Adjustment Center. And then we also work very closely with the groups like SCORE and the Women's Business Center, the SBA, Army Corps of Engineers. I mean, pretty much anybody we can kind of be in contact with. The nice thing about us, though, is we are taxpayer funded. As such, our services are at zero cost, and that is an important distinction. For example, and I usually like to use this example, there's a thing called SAM, which is a System for Award Management, is what you have to actually register with to do business with the federal government. There are a lot of companies out there would love to charge you anywhere from $500 to $1,000 and maybe even more to do a SAM registration. I have done probably close to 2,000 of those in almost a 9-year career with Missouri PTAC or Apex, and never cost anybody a dime. You just have to put up with my bad sense of humor at times. So by the grant agreement, though, we can really only help out with government contracting, what they call SBIR and STTR grants. The SBIR and STTR grants are kind of high-tech grants with innovative approaches to various technologies, including Department of Defense, USDA, National Forestry Service, Oceanic Institutes. I personally have not done a whole lot with the SBIR grants. I am very fortunate that in my office here down in Springfield, one of the SBDC folks is one of the experts across the state in SBIR. So if I ever have an SBIR question, I always get Sandra involved. And when I'm thinking about government contracting, don't just think about federal. That seems to be what everybody always goes to, though. But I work with an awful lot of folks that do business with state and local governments. So, counties and cities, public colleges and universities. So University of Missouri, Missouri State University, OTC. So Ozark Technical College, Missouri Southern State University in Joplin, Central Missouri University up in Warrensburg, and then also school districts. So obviously not like private school districts, but Appleton City School District, Springfield School District, Ozark School District, wherever you might happen to be. We assist in just about any area. It has to do with government contracting. Registration seems to be kind of where I spend a lot of my time, and socioeconomic certifications. If you were to take into those two areas right there alone, probably 75% of my time is in those two areas. We also have a bid match service to help you find things to bid on. We can do a solicitation review. I did one of those a little bit earlier this week. We've got lots of educational resources. And once again, if you can dream it with government contracting, we can at least give you some guidance in that area. The one thing we cannot help you with is what's called a bid protest. That is where the U.S. government may have done you wrong and you're wanting to bring, I'd say, lawsuit against them, but you're wanting to strenuously object to something they're doing. They don't want us to be involved in that, partly because of our funding with the U.S. government. Excuse me. So here are the territories that Missouri Apex serves. You will notice I'm in the light blue. I'm out of the Springfield office. You will kind of see my horribly drawn outline there of the services covered by the New Growth Women's Business Center, with the star being the location there in Appleton City. So basically, with the Missouri PTAC in the area that's covered by the New Growth, we've got 3 different counselors that work in that, or 4 different counselors that work in that area. We got the KC counselors, we got the counselors out of the Columbia region, got myself in the 21, 22 counties I have. And then also, if you happen to be in either Crawford County or Bourbon County, Kansas, we would refer you to the Kansas PTAC. They've got an excellent PTAC across the line. Good friends with most of the folks over there, and I'd be more than happy to make a referral if you happen to be listening to us from Kansas. I'm sorry, cough there. Give me 1 second. Sorry about that. So the certifications we're going to be talking about today, on the federal side, you got the woman owned, you've got the service disabled veteran owned, you've got what I'd call minority owned, which is small disadvantaged business, or the 8A business development program. And then you've got another kind of an oddball beast called the HUBZone, or historically underutilized business zone. And then on the state side, we have got the woman business enterprise and minority business enterprise, and then the service disabled veteran enterprise. And then through MoDOT, we've got the disadvantaged business enterprise, and then what they call the Airport Concessionaire DBE. And we're going to talk a little bit about each one of those programs and kind of what the requirements are. So the general eligibility requirements, and this is what we're looking at here, is really for the 8A program, the woman-owned small business program, and the service disabled veteran-owned small business program, and parts of the HUBZone program. Is that number one, that the owner must be either a U.S. citizen, so born as a U.S. citizen, or a naturalized citizen. Whoever the qualified owner, when I'm saying qualified owner, so for example, if you're going for a woman business ownership, so the woman business owner must control at least 51%, and that's unconditional control. And I've got a slide coming up on what I mean by unconditional control. They got to be a for-profit business. It's pretty obvious, but the firm should not be debarred or suspended by the U.S. government. So in other words, they are not what I'd call on the naughty list if you're getting close to Christmas. The place of the business must be located in the United States, or they must make a significant contribution to the U.S. economy. The folks we're talking to today, we are truly in the heartland, so that's probably not going to be applicable for anybody here. And then you've also got to be defined as what they call a small business according to the NAICS codes. And NAICS stands for North American Industry Classification System codes. There are well over, I believe, over 1,000 NAICS codes. These codes and the size standards are fairly generous. So for example, I believe you could be at a janitorial firm and do like $10 million a year as your average revenue. And I don't know a whole lot of janitorial firms that do that type of revenue. Seems like a general construction firm. I probably should know this off the top of my head, but it just recently went up, and I'm thinking it's like $43 million. Maybe it's $43.5 million a year is what you can be as a construction firm and still be considered to be a small business. So there are a lot of really big small businesses out there. Unconditionally controlled, I mentioned on the last slide, I'd talk about this. So these are kind of the hard and fast rules. Number one is that the owner, and we're just going to keep going with the woman here, that the woman business owner's got to have the highest officer position in the firm. So in other words, they need to be CEO, they need to be managing member, they need to be president, they need to be whatever title you might happen to come up with, but they should not be like second on the organizational chart. They also normally should be the highest paid person in the company, or have a really, really, really good reason why they're not the highest paid and be able to explain it. They got to control both the day-to-day and long-term business decisions. So when I'm saying they've got to control, if you stop jump down a couple different spots there. It says while there could be male owners or members that can't exercise actual control over the firm, probably should have changed that from male members to other members. But there cannot be what I'd call unanimous votes. If, for example, once again, with being a woman-owned business, if there are men owners involved, if a man business owner can tell the woman business owner they cannot do something, then the SBA is going to take the stance that they are not truly controlled by women business owners and will deny the application. The woman business owner or the veteran business owner, the minority business owner also has to show that they got the managerial experience necessary to manage the firm. So they need to show that they can actually make the decisions and not have to rely on somebody else. If they are a licensed organization, so as you can see, a CPA firm, a physician, the woman owner must also control or hold the license. And then there was also limitations on working outside of the business. Now, that to me, it's kind of a interesting way to define it. Must manage on a full-time basis, devote full-time to the business concern during normal working business hours in the same or similar line of business. Well, I used to try to interpret this that there are a lot of businesses that are fairly new that full-time in the business might be 10 hours a week. So I think there's ways that can be explained away. But if you have a business that's operating 40, 50 hours a week, and for example, the woman may be a teacher, they're going to have a hard time getting that company certified because they're going to say, hey, they're not really controlling it during the normal business hours. And then typically it cannot be a franchise business. And just mainly because the franchisee can normally control the business until the business owner, woman business owner, veteran business owner, what they can do. So economic disadvantage, you might have remembered I mentioned the 8A business development program. I mentioned the small disadvantaged business. I mentioned the economically disadvantaged woman-owned small business. Up to a couple of years ago, each of these programs had slightly different definitions of what was considered to be economically disadvantaged. Economically disadvantaged in this case is the individual net worth of the qualified owner would have to be less than $850,000, not including their home or the value they have in the business or what's in the retirement accounts that they can't touch. The adjusted gross income of the qualified owner over the last 3 years is less than $400,000. So if you've got a owner that's making $450,000 a year, they're going to make the argument that that person is not economically disadvantaged. And then the fair market value of all the assets, including the home and the value they have in the business, is got less than $6.5 million. So that's how they define economic disadvantage. So WSB, EDWSB, it's NAICS codes driven. Remember what I said about NAICS codes being the North American Industry Classification System. There are 646 NAICS codes that the federal government can say, hey, we can set this thing aside for a woman-owned small business. 113, they can set it aside for an economically disadvantaged woman-owned small business. And when I use the word set aside, what I'm meaning by that is a federal contracting officer can actually say the only companies that can bid on this would be a woman-owned small business if it falls within that NAICS code. And for every single solicitation that the federal government puts out, they have to choose the applicable NAICS code, which is related to whatever they are trying to buy at that point. The other thing to keep in mind is all economically disadvantaged woman-owned small businesses are WSBs, but not all WSBs are EDWSBs. So I'd mentioned the NAICS codes, how they're a little bit different for the two. This is a chart that I put together about a week or two ago for the woman-owned small business, where it's the EDWSB. The WSB, for example, you can be a hog and pig farmer and be eligible to be a WSB, but if you're doing chicken egg production, you can only be an EDWSB, you can't be a WSB. If you're doing actually commercial and institutional building construction, which is kind of the catch-all phrase for just about any building the federal government's going to buy, you can be a WSB, but if they're going to hire you to do just drywall or insulation, which you're not normally going to get that project directly from the federal government, then you can only be an EDWSB. So you can kind of see what the comparisons are there. Office of Lawyers would be a WSB. Janitorial services, on the other hand, would be for an EDWSB. And I've got a link on here that you can follow if you'd like to look at that later on. And I will be sharing these slides with you all later on today. Or probably not me personally, but I will forward them on to Lakin and let her kind of forward them on to the folks who run the call. One other option to become a woman-owned small business is that you can actually go with one of the SBA's approved third-party certifiers. There are 4 that are listed: the El Paso Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, the National Woman Business Owner Corporation, the U.S. Woman Business Chamber of Commerce, and the Business Enterprise National Council. This is potentially a way to speed up the certification. but it's also a cost behind that of anywhere that when I last researched the cost a couple of years back, it was around $350 or more. I'm going to say those have probably gone up a little bit higher. And this is definitely an application that you can complete on your own, and or I would encourage you to work with your local Missouri Apex to get the application process done. So the application process, and I'm kind of going back just from being a woman-owned small business to the 8A, so the Business Development Program, which is for socially and economically disadvantaged individuals, the WSB or the SDVOSB, which is Service Disabled Veteran-Owned Small Business, and all these are approved by the SBA. You first off have to have an active registration in the System for Award Management, or SAM, that I mentioned a little while ago. It can be a little complicated. If you've never been through SAM before, you have to have certain things you have to prove. The very first thing you have to do now is you have to get what's called a unique entity identifier, and they're looking for 4 different ways of proving that you're the legal name of your company, the physical address of your company, the year you were formed, and the state you were formed in, with the most difficult one to prove so far coming out to be the physical address of the company. Once you've gotten the cage code, which is what you get when you've registered in SAM, then you got to get established in a secondary SBA system. There are SBA Connect, there's the WSB Connect, and there's also a different one for the SDVOSB. So there are actually at least three different secondary systems that I can think off the top of my head. And then you've got to claim the business. By claiming the business, you've got to either establish it with the unique entity identifier that's been assigned to you, your taxpayer ID number, and then the bank account information that you gave with SAM. The reason why you have to give your bank account information when you register in SAM is that the federal government likes to pay you electronically, and so you've got to put the routing number and the account number in there. Unfortunately, the last week or so, this process has not been going overly smoothly. I think there's a blip right now between the SBA systems and the SAM.gov system. But we're hoping that gets fixed pretty quickly, because I was working yesterday with a woman-owned small business that we've now tried twice and have not been able to get her successfully connected. And we have double-checked and triple-checked her UEI, her taxpayer ID number, and her bank account. The registration process is a multi-part registration with many, many questions. And you've also got to upload various documents. For example, you have to upload a document being a proof of being a U.S. citizen. That can be an unexpired passport. It'd be a birth certificate. If you're a married woman and have taken on your husband's name, then you may also have to include the marriage license. You typically got to have your articles and or certificate of formation. I typically can have that if you've been formed in the state of Missouri, because that is public information. I can usually supply that to you. But then what a lot of people do not have is either an operating agreement or bylaws. And I like to define the operating agreement as something that you have when you're an LLC. And the bylaws are what you have when you're a C Corp or an S Corp. The operating agreement then, or the bylaws, defines who has control of the company and how decisions are made. And so that ends up probably being the most critical document that that the federal government will look at when they're trying to, the federal government or the state government will look at when they're trying to determine if you truly are controlled by the woman or the veteran or the minority. You also have to include the resume. And there's different certifications where you occasionally have to include some financial information. And keep in mind that this is not an all-inclusive list. Like I say, I could spend an entire time just going through the application process for the WSB. But those are the typical documents you got to provide. Then I also always tell my clients to watch for emails asking for additional information. So for the veteran certification, it's taking about a week or two. Woman-owned, taking up to 3 or 4 months. And then the 8A at the SBA saying they'd like to have those things decided on within a 90-day period. So 1 to 2 weeks is super speed when it comes to governmental contracting. 3 to 4 months feels a little bit slower, but 90 days. I mean, I think probably all the time frames are reasonable because there are a lot of applications going through the system at any one given time. Now, I've been talking about the 8A program. The 8A program is based upon an individual being both socially and economically disadvantaged. Under what the old rules were for social disadvantage, it was considered to be somebody that was a Black American, a Hispanic American, a Asian American, a Native American, so basically American Indian, or Native Hawaiian, or Native Alaskan, or Native. I gotta get the word. I probably shouldn't even say allude. Sorry, I'm kind of stumbling over that word, or a subcontinent Asian American, which is usually defined as being Pakistani, Indian, I believe, probably Filipino. And if you were under that, if you could prove your heritage, So for example, if you're a Native American, be able to supply with the federal government your card for being a Cherokee Nation or Shawnee Nation or Pawnee Nation, whatever nation you happen to be in, then you were automatically assumed to be socially disadvantaged. The economic disadvantage, if you think back to a few slides back, we were talking about the $850,000 per year. We were talking about or $450,000 per year for salary, $850,000 being your net worth, or $6.5 million. And if you hit those two categories, then you were considered to be both socially and economically disadvantaged. About 2 weeks ago now, the Supreme Court came out and basically stopped the affirmative action program. And what has happened now with that is that the SBA is now taking a step back and putting applications on hold. So these were just a couple of headlines that I kind of picked out. Rolling Rock's 8A program, SBA enjoined from using resumption of social disadvantage. And then one I just happened to see today was federal court finds SBA's 8A program unconstitutional. So we are somewhat in a confusion state right now about what this will mean and what this will hold into the future. But I would say stay tuned. If you happen to fit those qualifications, I would say go ahead and connect with the local PTAC or Apex office, and we will keep you in the loop as we learn more as this continues to play out in front of the court system. So the other federal certification I mentioned to you is what's called the HUBZone, and you may remember that's called for historically underutilized business zone. Truly in this certification, it's location, 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 which always makes me think of Marsha from the Brady Bunch. Both the principal office has got to be in a hub zone location, and then at least 35% of the employees have got to also live in a hub zone. And this is truly based upon the HUBZone map. And I think it's the next slide, I kind of talk about the HUBZone map. Once again, though, because it's a small business certification, you've got to be a small business that's for profit. The owner's got to be a U.S. citizen, either by birth or by naturalization. And then the principal office, even because a lot of companies will have 2 or 3 different locations, but the principal office is defined as where the majority of your employees work. And I like to give the example that if you've got a home office, which is your headquarters, that's got 5 employees in it, and across the street, you've got a warehouse that's got 50 employees in it. I have seen, for example, the HUBZone map in Springfield, where one side of the street is considered to be a hub zone, and the other side of the street is not a hub zone. If the map shows that the warehouse with the 50 employees is not in a hub zone, even though the company's headquarters is in a hub zone, the SBA will take the stance, rightfully so, that the business really does not sit in the hub zone location. So there's a hub zone map. I just happen to choose Springfield. That's where I'm located at today, and in St. Clair County. You will see that if you're familiar with the Springfield area, that map pretty much kind of goes from Highway 65 on the far right side. To the left side, I believe that is probably the West Bypass. You will see that it goes almost touches Highway 44. And then on the bottom side there, I believe that some of that's Battlefield Road, but probably right in, I can't even point at it with my pointer, but probably right underneath the G, that you'll see that solid line going across. I believe that's Springfield Avenue. So about half of Springfield proper is considered to be a hub zone. And then St. Clair County, because it is a rural county, the entire county of St. Clair County is a hub zone. So you will, and so looking down to the left where El Dorado Springs sits, so Cedar County, that's pretty much all hub zone also. And Wablo, and I've gone blank on that one, Benton County perhaps, that's also hub zone territory too. Application process for the hub zone is a little bit different than the other ones. Once again, though, you have to have the active registration to the system for ward management. We've got to establish once again, a application portal through what's called the SBA GLS system coming through the SBA Connect. You've got to claim the business using just your taxpayer ID number. It's a multi-part registration with lots and lots of questions that you've got to complete in one sitting. And I usually tell people that we do not want to go through this sitting until absolutely every single piece of documentation we need is ready to go. Because once you've hit submit, you've only got like a day or two to submit all the documents you got to submit. And unfortunately, it is kind of a clunky system, but based upon what I've seen the SBA doing over the last couple of years, I believe this system's probably on their radar, or one that needs to be updated. Lots of different documents you got to be able to upgrade. So once again, you got to prove you're a U.S. citizen. You got to have your articles, certificate of formation. Don't have it on here, but you also got to have your operating agreement. You've got to be able to show physical proof of the location of both the business and the residences of the employees that fall within that 35% being in the hub zone. Got to show proof that the employees are actually working for the company, and they consider an employee anybody that works 160 hours a month, or I'm sorry, 40 hours a month. So it's not the 160 hours a month. And you've got to attach a copy of the HUBZone match for each claimed employee. Then I've mentioned the electronic verification date, where is when all the documents must be uploaded within a day or two of submitting the application. And then what really kind of complicates it too is if you've got more than one location, then all of the locations must be registered the same with the cage code. And normally this application process is taking 1 to 2 months in order for you to get the certification. Now, why is it important to think about these federal certifications? Well, this is a 2022 goals and achievement the SBA just put out the other day. It shows what the goals are. So I had not mentioned small business, but 23% of all federal contracts are supposed to be awarded to small businesses. So the pink area, the red area there is a goal. The blue area is where they're actually at. So you can see for the small businesses, that's roughly 27% compared to the 23%. The woman-owned, you will see they are not meeting that goal. You will see that they are meeting the disadvantaged small business, so the 8A, which is the middle one. And then the service-disabled veteran-owned small business are also exceeding that one. But the HUBZone business are also not hitting those goals on a yearly basis either. So the woman-owned small business is at 5%, and they're running probably about 4.6, 4.7%. And the HUBZone set at 3%, and they're running about 2.7 or 2.8%. So the federal government's always looking for companies that they can work with directly that are HUBZone or woman-owned. And the other kind of cool thing about this too is why don't we say that you're a woman-owned business and you're a service-disabled veteran and you're also in a HUBZone, you actually can be qualified for all three of them. And when the federal government or a larger prime contractor subcontracts with you, they can actually count all of those goals for having that one contract with you. So many times I'm gonna spend a lot of time talking to the client, but if they are eligible for more than one type of certification, I will usually encourage them that they go ahead and go for more than just one certification they're applying for. Other advantages, they have what's called sole source. So the federal government, and I don't remember the exact numbers, but it's like up to $750,000 that they can actually just award to a company that's got a certification. They can do set asides. I mentioned to you earlier that the federal government can make that statement that, hey, we are going to put this thing aside so only service disabled veteran-owned small businesses or woman-owned small businesses can apply. And then the subcontracting. So if there are large prime contractors that you're working with, and one that comes to mind, and the only reason why I bring this company up is because I feel like I've got permission to do this numerous times, but it's Eagle Picture out of Joplin. They are a large prime contractor that offers high-tech batteries that are like with NASA and the Department of Defense. They have got to meet certain subcontracting goals, so they're always looking for like HUBZone businesses to work with. So there are advantages not just to selling directly to the federal government, but sometimes even more importantly, being a subcontractor. So with that being said, I'm going to stop for a second because we're getting ready to jump from the federal government to the state government and see if there's any kind of questions out there that I might need to answer for anybody. You see anything coming in?
I don't see any in the chat, but now is your time. If you have any questions, ask the expert now.
And I'm looking at the only attendee I see right now is Arturo Vargas. Do you want to go off mute for a second and like introduce yourself? It's not Carolina, is it?
I don't know. It might be her husband. I'm going to let them in if I can.
Okay, now I get my microphone to work. Oh, okay. You're probably sad because my microphone's actually working. Well, glad to have you here. So, no questions from you. I will go on then. Besides that, I needed a break. I felt like an auctioneer for a minute. I'm going to hit the slideshow again. There we go.
Oh,
perfect. There you go.
I cannot get my microphone to work, is what he said. No questions yet, but all is very interesting.
Okay, very good. As long as you're not going to sleep on us, that's what we ask. So.
Yes.
If you do go to sleep, your microphone's not working, I hear you snore, so it's okay.
Yeah, your camera's off too, so
yeah,
good.
Life's good. So state of Missouri certifications, a little bit different avenue, and I will talk a little bit about the difference between federal and state. So the first two I'm going to talk about briefly is a woman in minority business enterprises, commonly known as the WB or the MBE. And these are offered through the Office of Equal Opportunity out of Jeff City. One of the biggest differences, though, between a federal and a state certification is that the federal government will have the set asides. The state government never has anything set aside specifically for a woman-owned, minority-owned business or any other type of certification. But they do typically give bonus points. Now, the bonus points are kind of calculated in kind of an interesting way to calculate them. It's not truly like my understanding. I've never sat down and looked at them extremely carefully, but they take the bonus points very serious because Missouri is very adamant about prime contractors using an MB, WB, or SDV, and the prime contractor can be one of those. And the reason why I say that is look at solicitations recently. If you are, you've got to actually show that you've made an effort to either work within a minority business enterprise, a woman business enterprise, and even I'm jumping ahead of myself a little bit here, a service disabled veteran enterprise. And you've got to document your conversations about either why you're using or not using one of these companies. So it's a very good certification for you to apply for if you are eligible. So WB, MB State of Missouri, process is a very detailed application. In fact, in a lot of ways, it's a lot more detailed than any of the applications are at the federal level. You're more than likely going to get a site visit. When COVID hit, they pretty much quit doing site visits. They were doing anything through a Zoom call. But in a conversation earlier this week with the Office of Equal Opportunity, they are making it pretty clear that they're trying to get back out on the road again and actually come to see the company where it exists. It takes 1 to 2 months to get the determination. And like I just mentioned, much more documentation, especially for the WBE, than the WSB requires. And if a company is less than 1 year old, then they normally want a business plan. Now, it's not the scary business plan like you may have to put together to get company financing, but it's a here's who we are, here's how we're planning on improving sales, and here's how we see ourselves growing type things. Could be a page or two long. But and this listing to the right is not all inclusive, but they're looking for driver's licenses, birth certificates, and typically certain pages of the tax return. Once you're going to see the operating agreement or bylaws, certificate of formation, they're looking for things like bank signature cards. They want to make sure that the owner that's claiming the woman business enterprise and minority business enterprise can actually sign the checks. They're looking for loan documents. And once again, with the loan documents, they're wanting to make sure that the owners are signing the documents. They're looking for payroll information if the company's paying payroll, because there's a lot of businesses out there that are not currently paying payroll to their owners or their company. But if they are paying payroll, they want to make sure that the woman business owner, minority business owner is the highest paid individual. They're looking for an organizational chart to make sure that the company flows down properly with the minority or woman business owner actually controlling the company. I'm not 100% sure why they're looking for business insurance, but they're looking for business insurance policy, looking for proof of vehicle ownership. They've got a signed affidavit, and keep in mind that this is not an all-inclusive document. If you're working with me, what I've seen on this application is you and I can probably plan on meeting probably 3 different times for about an hour and a half each time. And a lot of it depends on how good the documents are that you've gathered. But we can help get that uploaded. But once you've gotten the application uploaded, they are pretty quick within a week or two of getting back to you and asking for additional information, which you can usually provide to them. And then, like I say, usually going to be about a 2-month turnaround. It's about the longest you ever see on this one. Service disabled veteran enterprise is going through a little bit of a change at this point. It was with the Office of Administration, Division of Purchasing. It's now going to the Office of Equal Opportunity, which I think is a great place for it to be. At this point, and this may end up changing a bit because OEO is taking it over, but at this point, it's still a very simple application. You've got the application itself, which is a 1-page document where you're describing what your business does. You've got your contact information, website, email addresses. You got your DD-214. If you're not in the military, the DD-214 is basically your honorable discharge paperwork. And then their VA rating letter to make sure you've actually got a rating from the VA for a service-related disability. Now, with the SDVE and the Service Disabled Veteran Owned Small Business, your rating, it can actually be 0%. And what the 0% means is that while you may not have a disability today, there are certain signs and conditions that may point that in the future you may end up having some issues develop from your time that you spend in the military. Application will be reviewed, and you may or may not get an email asking for additional clarification. Like I say, this is a little bit new to me with the OEO taking this over. But in a question I had with them the other day, is they're taking the application and then they're looking at, for example, your filing with the Missouri Secretary of State's office, and if your name as a service disabled vet does not appear on the Secretary of State office filing, then they're probably going to do a follow up and maybe ask for your operating agreement. This has been taking approximately 1 to 2 weeks. You are not eligible for a set aside like with the MBE, the SD or the WB, but there are up to 3 points that they will give you if you're being used in a statewide contract. And so once again, the website link I have here goes to the Office of Administration Division of Purchasing, where they've still got quite a bit of information on it, including the application. DBE is Disadvantaged Business Enterprise. In the Missouri, the certification flows through MoDOT, so Missouri Department of Transportation, KCI, so Kansas City International Airport, Lambert, which is obviously the St. Louis Airport, and then by State Development, which is out of the St. Louis area. Requirements to become a disadvantaged business enterprise: you've got to be owned by a U.S. citizen. You've got to be a small business. Now, their definition of a small business is much different than the definition of a small business that you are seeing for the SBA controlled ones. They define a small business as having an average gross revenue over a 3-year period of $30.4 million or less. While that's still a pretty good size number, on the NAICS codes, and I had not mentioned this earlier, they either are looking at being a large or small business based upon your revenue and or the number of employees. So if you're a manufacturing company, typically it's going to be at least 500 employees before you are considered to be a large business. You've also got to be for profit, and you've got to be 51% unconditionally owned by both a socially and economically disadvantaged owner. Socially disadvantaged is considered to be a minority, pretty much the exact same list I gave before. Black American, Native American, Hispanic, Asian American. You are considered to be socially disadvantaged in this case under a DBE if you're a woman, or if you are a disabled individual. So in other words, where I would not qualify either as a woman or as a minority, if I were maybe had and I'm not sure exactly how they're going to define disabled, but if I were perhaps a quadriplegic, then I would probably have an opportunity to apply for social disadvantage. Or if I were blind, perhaps I would have the opportunity to potentially participate in this program by being considered to be disabled, but I would have to prove that. Economic disadvantage is once again a lot different than it is for the SBA, the federal government. It's a lot lower in number, but the net worth has got to be less than $1.32 million. That also does not include the house, but I do believe it includes the value of the business. And you can learn a little bit more about this from the transportation.gov. I mean, even though this is a Missouri awarded prize or Missouri awarded certification, if you do get certified by the state of Missouri, then you are also eligible to become what's a U.S. Department of Transportation DBE. And I don't know this yet, but I put in that little green box so the certification might be put on hold, just like the 8A program. I guess a little bit of that status. I mean, with the 8A kind of in limbo, I could see this potentially becoming in limbo too, but I haven't heard nothing on that as of yet. DBE application process is actually 2 separate applications. Depending on who you're applying from, it may be through an online portal. It may be through a kind of uploading through an email, the documents. The business information documents are very much like the information required by the MB and WB application we talked about a little while ago. I mean, they're looking for signature cards. They're looking for operating agreements, lots and lots of different things that you'll pretty much already have for the MB and WB. But the personal net worth statement is extremely detailed, and it's probably 5 or 6 pages long. And it talks about stocks and bonds. It talks about if you have rental properties. It talks about if you have a second home. It talks about furnishings. And you know, I usually like to say less is more on the furnishings. I mean, I would probably go off of whatever your furniture is being insured for. But if you're a collector of rare sports memorabilia, and you happen to have a Babe Ruth card that's worth $40,000, baseball card's worth $40,000, and they're going to want to know that information too, because they will use that to determine if your net worth is below that $1.32 million or not. So can this actually pay off? Well, this is back from April 16th of 2021. It gives a bid letting for that month of April back in 2021. And it shows up the various DBE firms at these larger companies. So this Herzog contract, I don't know anything about, or Emery Sapp, who I do know a little bit about, was awarded a $1.554 million contract. So the third contract down. You will see over to the right that they actually have a 7% participation with the DBEs in the Columbia Curb and Gutter, Construction Anchors, DNS Fencing, Shrimp Landscaping, Silver Eagle Construction Products. But with all of the DBE goals that are being met that month, if you add up the entire awarded amount of all those contracts, those DBE participation goals came out to be about $3.5 million for these DBE firms. Now you will notice, for example, like with Emery Sapp, and come back down to about the middle, the I-70 corridor there in Boone County, you had the one contract for 1.2 million, the other one for 2.4 million. That Traymar contracting is the one they use both times. So some of these names appear on there quite often. But my thought is that if you're involved in potentially doing road construction and you can qualify as a DBE, I would much rather see you get that qualification, that certification, than not get it. The other thing too, this is kind of an offshoot of the disadvantaged business enterprise, but it's considered to be the ACDBE. ACDBE stands for Airport Concessionaire Disadvantaged Business Enterprise. Basically the exact same requirements as the DBE. They do end up coming up with a little bit different discussion though about what is considered to be a large or a small business. So you can see the average revenue on the DBE was 30.4 million roughly. On this one here, it's at $56.42 million. So once again, a rather large small business. If you're a bank having less than $1 billion in assets, rental car companies, your average revenue over the last 3 years is 75 million. Pay telephone companies shows us data a little bit of less than 1,500 employees, or car dealerships less than 350 employees. The reason why this is important is because airports have goals to try to award contracts to disadvantaged business enterprises, either directly or through example, maybe getting your products in like a Hudson News down there in the center. So if you, for example, might be able to open up like a rental car company and you meet these goals, that will help the airports meet their goals, and they're probably a lot more in tune to inviting you in to have conversations about locating your branches at the airport. So with that being said, I didn't think I could get through this thing in 44 minutes, but I've actually gotten through this thing in 44 minutes. So I guess we're at the question and answer session, but I am going to share my contact information first. Once again, Alan Waldo, the CPP, is a certified procurement professional. The best way to probably get in touch with me is by my email, the waldoaj@missouri.edu. I work out of the office a couple days a week, work other locations a couple days a week. But email I'm typically connected with, and then my office phone number is at 417-837-2612. But if you are a business that is seeking to do some type of a certification, I highly recommend you connect with the Missouri Apex or Kansas Apex, and let us be of assistance to you, because that's kind of what we do. I mean, that's who we are. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and keep that up for a second. I'm going to quit sharing, get to there. I see some stuff in the chat box. Glad you've joined us today. You're welcome. Insurance is just in case you and the vendor do not agree on fault of a project that went wrong. Oh, perfect. Glad you educated me on that one. That's perfect. Thank you. Okay, you got to tell me more about yourself. I mean, so are you with the company? Are you can type in the chat, please.
I am the owner.
Which company? Oh, very good. Very good, very good. Are you out of Missouri? Are you located in Missouri? Or are you? Print marketing material. Wonderful.
Overland Park, Kansas.
Perfect. Hey, are you connected with the Kansas PTAC? So you don't mind, I mean, if you wouldn't mind sending me an email, if you have an interest that is working with the PTAC or the Apex, I'd be more than happy to make an introduction to the Kansas folks over there. They do a great job, and they're very nice people. So if you have an interest, be more, like I say, more than happy to make the connection there for you. So,
We have an email address.
okay, let me get that.
Yeah, I definitely, I do business counseling. I didn't introduce myself in that way. But all of my clients that are interested in any sort of government contracting, we send them right over to PTAC. So I think it would be a good connection for anyone who even has interest in getting started or if they have any questions.
Okay, then I have to ask the other question then too. Are you related to Carolina by any chance? And Carolina actually works for the SBA in Kansas City. You don't think so? Okay.
Don't think so. They're out of Puerto Rico. I know her husband is from Puerto Rico. So you guys have the same last name. You might want to make that connection at some point.
So your name is Arturo, Arturo. Arthur, okay. Very good. I will make that. I will try to get that introduction made to you today. So I've got another event I got to leave for here pretty quickly, but I will do that. So nice to meet you, sir.
And Alan, thank you again for some great content. I know every time I watch these, I learn something new myself. So thank you again for your knowledge and being here today and presenting for us. And I will send you links as soon as this is on our YouTube channel. That way you can have them for yourself, as well as anyone who is registered will get a copy of the link. If there's no more questions, Arthur, we thank you for joining us today. And I think we're going to call it a wrap.
Sounds good. Thank you all.
Thank you. Have a good day.
See ya. Bye-bye.